In small town America, there are certain people who talk to trust without question: the local sheriff, a teacher, a pastor, but maybe no one more than a nurse. They're the ones we turn to when we're most vulnerable, the healers we trust in our most fragile moments. In Waverly, Tennessee, Heather Thompson was one of those people, a 32-year-old nurse practitioner, a mother, and a granddaughter. She was known as a healer, someone dedicated to preserving life. But on a cold morning in January, that image was shattered forever. On January 2nd, 2026, a Friday, authorities were sent to a home on East Little Richland Road to perform a welfare check. What they found inside sent a shockwave of horror through the tight knit community. Investigators discovered an unimaginable scene. Four family members, all dead from gunshot wounds. And the evidence pointed to a conclusion that was as shocking as it was devastating. The healer had become the killer. In a town where there was no record of violence or mental health calls to the home, this horrific murder, take yourself out, left everyone, from seasoned investigators to shell-shocked neighbors, grappling with one haunting question. Why? That call for a welfare check was the first official sign something was terribly wrong. We don't know who made the call, but their concern was enough to send deputies from the Humphrey County Sheriff's Office to the house. When they arrived, there were no signs of a break-in, no clues pointing to a robbery gone wrong. The scene inside was quiet, still, and profoundly tragic. Officers found four people, all dead from what appeared to be gunshot wounds. They were quickly identified as three generations of the same family. There was 88-year-old Evelyn Johnson, the family matriarch, her 32-year-old granddaughter, Heather Thompson, and then there were the two youngest, the ones who loss feels the most incomprehensible, Heather's sons. 13-year-old Isaiah Johnson, a boy just becoming a teenager, and his little brother, 4-year-old Arias Thompson. Humphreys County Sheriff Chris Davis, who admitted he knew the family personally, was visibly shaken when he spoke to the public later that day. He confirmed the devastating preliminary findings. Evidence suggested that Heather Thompson, the nurse and mother, had killed her two sons and her grandmother before taking her own life. An entire family gone in an instant, leaving behind a silence that felt louder than any gunshot. To really get the shock that gripped Waverly, you have to understand who Heather Thompson seemed to be. She wasn't an outsider. She wasn't a troubled figure known to police. By all accounts, she was a dedicated professional and a part of the community fabric. Thompson was a nurse practitioner working at Ascension St. Thomas Three Rivers Hospital, right there in Waverly. In a small town, a nurse practitioner is more than just a healthcare provider. They're your neighbor, a familiar face at the grocery store, someone whose kids go to the local schools. They are woven into the life of the town they serve. The very foundation of her job was built on care, compassion, and healing. The word nurse itself means trust. It's a job that demands deep empathy and a steady hand. This is what makes the contradiction of her final act so jarring. A mother's job is to protect. A nurse's job is to preserve life. It's almost impossible for our minds to reconcile how someone who embodies those two sacred trusts could betray them so violently. It leaves you searching for an explanation that might not even exist. As the community reeled, the investigation, with help from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, turned from what happened to why, but so far the search for a motive has only made the mystery deeper. Sheriff Davis said it's plainly there was no history of domestic violence, no record of mental health related calls to the home. This wasn't a situation with obvious warning signs or a clear descent into crisis. From the outside, there were no red flags. Investigators did know that Heather was estranged from the child's father, Bea Thompson, who lived in New Mexico. In the aftermath, the grieving father shared his shock and sorrow online. I miss my sons already. Daddy still loves you, he wrote in a reply to the sheriff's department. In another post he shared, as a father, it hurt and shattered my soul to hear my sons, Arius and Isaiah, have been taken from me, and they are no longer with us. Every second of today, I wish I could just wake up. He started a GoFundMe to bring his sons' bodies back to New Mexico for burial. A heartbreaking task in the face of such an enormous loss. While the estrangement is a piece of the story, it doesn't explain what happened. Familicide, a parent killing their children, is rare and incredibly complex. Experts in other cases say it can be triggered by a range of devastating psychological states. Sometimes it's a twisted kind of altruism, a misguided belief that they are saving their children from some future pain. Other times, it can be an act of revenge against a partner, using the children as the ultimate weapon. And to be clear, we just don't know what was going through Heather Thompson's mind. But with no clear motive, we're forced to talk about the hidden pressures that can push someone to a breaking point. Was it a silent battle with depression? A crushing sense of hopelessness? The stress of a demanding career and being a single mom? Without a note or a confession, we're left with the devastating result in the chilling silence where the answers should be. Trying to understand a tragedy like this is human nature. It's why we look at these cases not for sensationalism, but to try and make sense of the senseless, and maybe to learn how to see the invisible signs in the future. If you value this kind of respectful, in-depth analysis of true crime, I hope you'll consider subscribing and sharing your own thoughtful comments below. You can't overstate the impact this had on Waverly. Sheriff Chris Davis summed it up with emotion in his voice. Here again, small town America. Here again. I know the families, so we're going to do right by them. His words capture the painful closeness of a tragedy in a place where everybody knows everybody. This wasn't just a headline. It was the loss of their neighbors, their friends, and a student in the school. The director of Humphreys County Schools released a statement mourning 13-year-old Isaiah, a reminder that the loss was echoing through the hallways of the local middle school. For the people of Waverly, this was another deep wound for a town that's already been through so much. The very area where the family lived was hit hard by a disastrous flash flood in August of 2021 that killed 20 people. More recently, the county was shaken by a deadly industrial accident. To have this kind of violence unfold in their community is trauma, laid on top of trauma. It chips away at the sense of safety that holds a town together. When a healer becomes a killer, when a mother harms her own children, it turns the world upside down. It forces a community to face the terrifying idea that the worst dangers can come from the most trusted places, leaving scars that will take a very, very long time to heal. The case of Heather Thompson is a tragedy of unanswered questions. We know what happened on that January morning. We know who the victims were. Evelyn Johnson, a great-grandmother at the end of a long life. Isaiah Johnson, a boy just about to start his, and little Arius Thompson, a child who never really got to begin. And we know that the person authorities believe took their lives was supposed to be their protector. What we don't know is why. There's no public record of a cry for help, no clear motive, and no final explanation. The investigation is still ongoing, but it's possible we'll never have a definitive answer. All that's left is the bottomless grief of a father, the shock of a community, and the memory of 3 innocent lives lost. The story of the killer nurse of Waverly is a brutal reminder that the scariest monsters aren't always strangers in the dark. Sometimes they are the hidden demons that can consume the people we think we know. It's a story with no real conclusion and one that ends in a haunting, permanent silence.